Today, we're going to be talking about skating ramps for beginners. So full disclosure, in general, I'm pretty bad at skating transition, but even just rolling back and forth in a mini ramp or carving around a bowl can be a lot of fun, and it's kind of just a totally different feeling than skating on flat. So even if you're just learning the basics of it, I would still highly recommend it. So speaking of which, we're going to start off with the basics. The very first thing I would recommend is going and finding yourself a little ramp that's not too tall. And what we're going to be doing is pushing towards it while going pretty slow, just to sort of get a feeling of riding up the transition and back down. And I really do mean slow. This is sort of just to start to feel out what it's like to roll up something that curves into a transition. It can be a pretty awkward feeling at first, and the main things you want to watch out for are that you're not leaning too far forward or too far backwards when you're going up the ramp. And also a key factor is you want to keep your center of gravity low, so make sure that you're bending your legs as you're rolling up the transition. One thing that can help with this is if you find a flat bank that isn't curved, and you do the same motion, sort of just to get the feeling of shifting your weight when you roll up and then back down the ramp. You would basically want to practice this on a bank enough times until you feel comfortable rolling up and then rolling back down fakie. And then you would go back to your transition, and it's almost the same motion, but it does feel a little different. But little by little, as you get comfortable, you can work your way up to going faster and higher up the ramp. So once you've gotten comfortable with that, we're going to move on to the concept of pumping. So if you were to roll just straight at a ramp without doing anything else with your legs or body, and then roll back down, you'll start to notice pretty quickly that you're not really gaining or maintaining any speed as you're going up and down. And this is where learning how to pump really comes into play. So essentially, pumping is when you're rolling towards the transition. As you start to go up the curve, you bend your legs, and this sort of lowers your center of gravity and keeps you balanced. And then as you start to come back down, you once again crouch down and push down into your legs. And then this creates a force which allows you to pick up speed. It's a little hard to demonstrate on video if you don't know what you're looking for, but it's basically this motion of squatting down and then lifting back up. The key thing about this one is getting the timing right of when to do these motions. And again, you can find yourself some sort of bank or even like an A-frame ramp, and you can apply the same concept, whereas you're hitting the transition of the ramp, you're bending your legs, and then as you're coming down the other side of the transition, you push down with your feet and straighten your body back out. In my opinion, the best way to practice this is to find yourself a mini ramp or another situation where you have two quarter pipes opposite of each other, and then start off slow by rolling up one and then back down, and little by little try to add in that pumping motion until you notice that you're maintaining or picking up speed. So we've done everything basically starting at the bottom of the ramp and pushing towards the transition, but I want to briefly talk about dropping in. So I've already made a video about this, which I'll put a link to, but I needed to mention it because it really is one of the most fundamental things you can do when skating transition. Once you've gotten more comfortable, this is going to be the main way that you enter into transition or a half pipe or a bowl or whatever it might be. And so even though it can be really scary to learn at first, it's definitely one of the most important things to learn. Just like the others, you can practice this on a bank because it'll be less steep and without the curved transition. And this should help you sort of get more comfortable with the idea of standing on your tail and then pushing down on your nose and leaning forward. And you can definitely work your way up by starting off with a really small ramp and then slowly getting more comfortable until you can drop in on larger ramps. Up next, I want to talk about kick turns. So just like on flat ground, a kick turn is when you put weight onto your back wheels so that your nose lifts up, and then you turn either front side or back side 180. These are great because the concept of rolling up but then back down a ramp fakie can feel really strange at first, but if you have kick turns down, then this should be a bit more comfortable for you. Just like the other aspects of ramp skating, for this one you want to make sure that you keep your center of gravity relatively low. And also just like the other things, you can start off by doing this really low on the transition, and then slowly work your way up so you can get higher and higher up the ramp. You can do these front side or back side, and for whatever reason I'm always more comfortable with front side, but you can try out whatever works for you. And once again, you can practice this on a flat bank just so you kind of get the feeling of doing a kick turn while at a slight angle. And once you get really comfortable with that, you can then bring it back to the transition and try it on a ramp. So in my opinion, if you're looking to start getting into skating transition and ramps in general, then learning these core fundamental things would definitely be a good starting point. Just like with skating flat, it's really good to get your foundation down, which means having proper balance and knowing how to shift your weight, as well as just being comfortable in general, rolling up a ramp and then back down backwards. So basically, I just think if you learn all these things and you have them down pretty well, then you'll have a really good basis for going out and actually learning some tricks on transition. So go out and have fun. As always, I'd like to thank my wonderful Patreon pledgers. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.